There she is. Hi.
Hi. Hi.
I'm,
So nice to meet you.
I'm so happy to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I was kind of introducing you, not that you need that much of an introduction. I'm sure some of our audience, uh, is connected, but I thought it would be helpful for people to hear a little bit about who you are and your great new book. And so congratulations on your book.
Thank you so much. It's
I know how hard it is to write a book and how scary it is to put it out into the world. And what I love about this book, Dr. Julie, is that you say in the beginning, this is not a therapy book. This is a book of life skills.
yeah.
And we've never needed life skills more than we have it today. So tell me why you wanted to make that distinction. This is not therapy. These are skills, and you have to invest in these skills every single day, just like you invest in your physical health.
Yeah, absolutely. And really it's they are skills that are often and concepts that are often taught in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And therapy is behind closed doors, so a lot of this stuff isn't shared. And so people only get to learn about these things if they engage in therapy, which not everybody does. Not everybody has access to that kind of thing. But I found that when I was working as a psychologist offering therapy, so many people found the educational aspect of that therapy so helpful. And I think lots of people don't realize that a significant portion of some therapies is educational. So you learn a bit about how your mind works and how you can impact on how you feel and your mood and influence your relationships and those sorts of things. So I wanted to kind of make that available outside of the therapy room. And because really, the title is really an amalgamation of what lots of people used to say to me when they would learn some of these things. They'd say, how has nobody taught me this before? It's not rocket science. It's really simple to learn, and it's helping every day. I wish
And
I'd known
I
this 2
love
years
that
ago.
because you talk in the beginning of the book, you said that you were seeing a client and she came in kind of, down, depressed with her kind of head down. And after several sessions, she was reinvigorated. She felt hopeful. She felt better about herself. And she said to you, why has nobody told me this before? And you make the point of saying it wasn't you so much, but it was what you taught her about
Yeah.
herself. What do you think, Dr. Julie, is the biggest misconception that all of us have that changes in a therapist's room where we go, oh, I didn't know that. Why didn't somebody tell me that? And now I can go out into the world.
I think probably the most life-changing one is the one that gives people hope, which is that they realize it's not necessarily, if they're struggling, it's not necessarily because something is going wrong in your brain or something is faulty or you're not getting life right in some way. You're struggling because you're human and life is really, really tough and it throws things at you. And unless you have this kind of toolbox with as many tools as possible to deal with different things that life's going to throw at you, then yeah, it can knock you off your feet occasionally. And so that's where the sort of tool, gearing ourselves up with as many different tools as possible enables us to then face things where, because there's something else I say a lot to people is that it's not and I think I say it in the introduction actually, that it's not a path to a problem-free life either. It doesn't
Right.
stop life from throwing stuff at you. It just gives you a few tools and a bit of armor to kind of carry along with you so that you're more equipped when things happen.
So right now we're in unprecedented times, right? People are dealing with a pandemic. People are changing work. They're dealing with relationships evolving. They're working from home. They're raising kids. And we're hearing so much about anxiety across the board. Women, men, young kids, older people. Have you ever seen this kind of epidemic of anxiety before? And what's your best advice to people about how to navigate those feelings that come up? And you distinguish anxiety from stress too.
Yeah, absolutely. I've kept stress and anxiety as completely separate sections in the book, because although they're part of that same threat response, so we get that same increased alertness and that feeling, that kind of the heart palpitations and that kind of thing, we conceptualize them differently, and so that makes a difference in how we respond to them and that kind of thing. So but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm seeing more anxiety out there and hearing more, you know, people telling me every day, just, you know, coming up to me, that people that hardly know me but have heard what's going, you know, going on with the book, saying, do you know what, I've been experiencing this, and how helpful it is to know that I'm not the only one. You know,
What
that's
are they telling you they're experiencing?
I think there's lots of health anxiety going on, and understandably so, right? Why wouldn't there be? You know, it's so confusing when, on the one hand, we're kind of learning to, you know, take all of these new precautions, you know, the masks and the cleaning and all those things that we're doing to keep ourselves and other people safe. But at what point do we know that enough is enough? At what point do we know we've done enough? When we're given that sense of responsibility for other people's lives, that's a great sort of burden on your shoulders if you're not then sure that you have done enough, you know. Right. So do I clean all the door handles again, or do I wash my hands again, or do I go around and see my grandmother again? And so it's that sense of responsibility for keeping everybody else safe that generates huge amounts of anxiety. So I think there's a lot of that going on. I think there's a lot of sort of worry and health anxiety, but also lots of other things, because there's been a lot of loss, not only people's lives, but loss in terms of livelihoods, financial security, homes. You know, those things are not to be invalidated. They are life-changing experiences.
What do you think you've been able to do on social media? You have several million followers, right, on TikTok, and you know, hundreds of thousands on Instagram. What do you think you're tapping into?
I think, you know, it all sort of blew up very quickly, and I think the whole account was purely about mental health. So my one rule for myself was every video needs to have some sort of value. We wanted to engage people and make it interesting, but every video needed to be about sending a little message out that had something to do with, you know, mental health education. And the fact that people would click follow on an account like that during the pandemic, I think said a huge amount about what people were dealing with and stuff. And I think what we tapped into was everybody felt like they were free falling. Everybody was struggling with their own individual situations, and anything that makes us feel like there's a possibility that I could use this idea or this concept to help me today and tomorrow, by myself when I'm stuck in isolation, or with my family, then that can only be a good thing. So and because we had to, it was 60-second videos, so we had to make it very bite-sized and one message at a time to fit it in. I think that helps too, because you can just take this one message and then you can kind of walk away with that and think it through and make it work, rather than perhaps learning a lot at once and then you forget half of it anyway.
Yeah, so several people have asked me again to say the name of the book. The book is called Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? Dr. Julie Smith. And it says up in the corner, everyday tools for life's ups and downs. And I love that the downs is upside down. And this book is, what's great about it, I think, is that it kind of, I want to show people, you can pick it up and put it down. It's not one of those books that you have to sit and read all the way through. So you can, like, if you're interested in motivation and how to make it part of your identity, you can do that. If emotional pain is what you're feeling, there's how to make it go away, what to do with those emotions, how to harness the power of your words. On grief, let's talk a little bit about grief, Dr. Julie, because I've written about grief. I always say that we're a grief illiterate nation here in the United States, but I think we're a grief illiterate world, right? And we're afraid of grief. We think we can't manage it. I certainly grew up thinking that way. And now there's so much grief all around us, loss everywhere. You're saying, how do you advise people to get comfortable with grief, if one could ever do so, and manage grief?
Well, something I've done a lot of videos on actually is helping people to understand what to say. I think that's one of the biggest things that creates this barrier with grief, is not only with the people who are, you know, struggling with grief, but it's all the people around them who are in their own head thinking, oh God, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I say something and it's wrong and it makes it worse, or, you know. And so I've done a few videos around understanding that it's not so much about the exact words you use, it's about how you make someone feel. And so you know, it's less helpful to get sort of tied up in exactly what you should say, but more helpful to understand that, okay, what do I want this person to feel? I want them to feel that I'm here for them and I care, and that their pain matters to me. And so you can, if you take that as a sort of general feeling, then what you come out with and what you say is much more natural to you, but you get across to that person what you're feeling. And because I say often to people as well that, you know, if you're not sure what to say, it's okay to say that. It's okay to just be honest and say, wow, I really, really want to get this right, and I want to support you, and I have no idea how to do that. You know, and to ask people as well, how can I best support you? What is it that you need? I want to be around you and I want to be helpful to you. You know, do you need me to shut up, or do you need, you know, and watch TV with me and have a break from everything, or do you need to talk about something? Or, you know, so just allowing that person to lead you as well.
But what if you're the person struggling with grief? What if you're the person who's experienced loss of a job, loss of a loved one to the pandemic, loss of a pet, just loss in general, loss of hope?
Yeah.
How do you, and you feel overwhelmed with grief and that you can't even see your way forward?
Yeah, I think something that I talk about in the book is the idea of a kind of swimming in a lake, that you, if it all feels overwhelming and you're not sure you can manage that, then you don't necessarily kind of dive in and stay in. You take some time. So you might kind of you step in and go up to your knees or your waist, and then you come back out and you take a rest, and then you go back in again. And it's very much this idea of allowing yourself to be in the feeling and not trying to push it away at that time, but allowing yourself to soothe your way through it. So taking care of yourself through that while you're experiencing that natural pain, but then also allowing yourself to take some rest from it. So that might mean a short-term distraction until the next time you're reminded, and that's okay. But what you're doing in those short periods of time where you turn your attention to something else for a minute is you just give your body and your mind this little moment of rest, or this few minutes or even an hour of rest where you're not thinking about it for a while. So it's remembering that it's okay to experience the pain as long as you're using skills to soothe your way through it. In a kind of safe way. But then also it's okay to be distracted for a while, because it will come back, you know, it gets re-triggered, and only a slight memory or something brings up that thought, and then the pain is back. So it's the idea of kind of being in and then being back out, leaning in and out of it.
I think your videos are also so great, because I watched the other day the concept of loneliness, right? We hear a lot about people feeling isolated, feeling lonely. And you did this video where, like, if you're doing this, you're lonely. And you put up these images that aren't necessarily associated with loneliness. So how do you kind of take a subject like that and kind of turn it on its head?
It's kind of interesting, those videos, because those sorts of things can help people to just reflect and think about, well, is that because I'm lonely, or is it something else? Because actually, I guess some of those behaviors can also be a signal of something else. But it helps people to just reflect on, if I am stuck in a cycle, so let's say I just keep buying stuff online and I can't stop it, you just give that moment to go, what's that about? You know, am I lonely? Am I replacing something else, you know, that with something else? Or what am I doing that, what function is that serving for me? And what pain am I covering up? Or, you know, so that you can just look at it, because without looking at it and starting to try and understand it and face it with curiosity, these cycles just keep going. They become more and more damaging.
I love it. I think, and one of the things that you're dealing with, so when you're talking about grief, you're talking about loneliness, you talk about low mood, you talk about darkness. These are universal topics, which I think is what's so great about what you're doing, because I think people can feel like, I am the only one in a dark place. I am the only one. You start out with low moods. I am the only one who's not particularly happy, or who's not positive. I'm the only one not being able to manage my grief. I'm the only lonely one. And what you're really saying is that these are kind of parts of life, right? And we need tools to help us navigate. None of us are immune from grief. None of us are immune from loneliness, right? None of us are immune from like the struggle to be happy all the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was really important to me about structuring the book in that way. I don't mention, I don't sort of go into any clinical disorders or diagnoses throughout the whole book. It's all about problems that all of us face at some point, right? You, like you say, we all have days when we just feel overwhelmed with stress, or we all have days when we're struggling in our relationships, or we kind of have self-doubt about something that we need to, you know, do or face, and or struggling with confidence or fear, all of those things that they're a normal part of human experience. But all of these skills that help us to deal with it seem to be locked in the therapy room and hidden, and to me that just didn't seem fair. You know, it's the kind of and like you're saying earlier, it's not that I've come up with all of these concepts, it's that they're evidence-based, so they're things that have been you know, conceptualized and researched over the, you know, decades, to the point where they were then used in therapies, and I just feel like they, you know, they're not things that we have to use under supervision only. You know, some of them are really, really simple and really easy to put in place.
You also talk about that we get this whole kind of happiness, pursuit of happiness, and certainly in the United States, right? It's in the Constitution. It's like the pursuit of happiness. Everybody's like, I need to be happy. Why aren't I happy? Will money bring me happiness? Will that big job bring me happiness? Will a partner complete me and fulfill me? And you're very clear about what happiness is and isn't. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think there's this kind of real sense that, like you say, we have to strive for this happiness, and that we have to be not only happy, but we have to be happy all the time. We have to be productive all the time, and we have to be motivated to be productive and happy all the time. And all of it, you know, and this is kind of an idea of success, or and it's a complete lie, you know, that we are not built to feel happy all the time. So, you know, happiness or pleasure or joy, they're emotions, just like sadness and anger and anxiety. They come and go like every other emotion. And so the trouble is with having happiness as this sort of, we must feel this all the time.
Yeah.
It sets us up to feel like we're failing, you know, because when you then have a low day, for whatever reason, could be caused by a dozen different things, but you have a slightly low day, then you feel like you're failing. You feel like you're not keeping up with everybody else. And we kind of then tell ourselves in our heads, everybody else is happier and everyone else is just getting it right. You know, they're doing everything they need to do. And so they're more, therefore, happy and more successful, which then makes us feel worse, right? It doesn't help us to then get back up again and do something to kind of help our mood lift or anything like that.
So I think it's what's great. I keep saying, you know, the way Dr. Julie has laid this out, as you can see a little bit from what I have marked, is like on grief, on self-doubt, on fear, on stress, and on a meaningful life. And the problem with I just want to be happy, when to seek help. You do videos on medication, to medicate or not medicate. So you're using kind of social media to provide these life skills. And there's so much news around social media making people feel worse instead of better, making people feel more anxious than comfortable. Where do you come down on that?
Yeah, you know, I when I was working as a therapist, and I wanted to kind of put this information out there and make it available. And, you know, I was talking to my husband about it, and we're saying, you know, social media is the place to share that because that's where everybody's attention is. And to a degree, I kind of thought, well, you know, I can sit in my therapy room, see one person at a time, and complain about the fact that everybody is on social media and potentially accessing misinformation or stuff that's not helping their mental health. Or I could put something positive out there so that anyone who is struggling and looking for something and may come across misinformation suddenly has this possibility of coming across my stuff instead, and having a bit of education that might be, you know, more evidence-based and more helpful and more grounded. So for me, it was a sort of, I can't control social media and I can't control everybody's access to it, so I can try and use my own skills to put something positive into the world.
So what's your hope? I mean, if I'm going to talk to you in a year from now, 2 years from now, what kind of spells success to you? What will make you feel that all of these creative videos and the depth of the book mattered, worked, did what you wanted it to do?
For me, it all comes from the feedback. There's the direct, although that's the beauty of the kind of social stuff is the direct feedback I get. And really it's what's kept me going for the 2 years. Because it was a lot of work around the family and things. I got 3 small children and stuff. And so it was a bit of a struggle for a while. But the thing that really kept me motivated to keep going was the constant messages of people saying, thank you so much. This is really helping. You know, I'm doing this with my daughter and it's really changed things for us. Or, you know, we're working on that and that's really helped. We're checking in each day for new videos, what's coming up. And, you know, it's that kind of, you realize this is real people who are watching this with real lives and real problems.
Mm.
And if you can, with one video, if you can just help someone just that tiny bit, you know, just a couple of %, then it's done its job. So I guess the day I stop receiving messages saying this is good, I'll probably just, that's enough. I'll move on to something different.
I read one of the questions. A lot of questions are coming up here that they go so fast, so I can't read all of them. But somebody said, could she please tell us what she thinks are the 2 most important tools in this toolbox?
Oh, wow. That's tricky, partly because it's full of lots of different problems. And I think with any toolbox, if you try and use the wrong tool for the wrong job, then it's not going to be so helpful. But I think probably as a general rule, tackling every problem begins with self-awareness. So that sounds kind of vague, but you have to be willing to look at any problem. And that sounds easy, but it's not, because sometimes being honest with ourselves and really taking a good look at how am I contributing to this problem? So what are the things I'm doing that are keeping me stuck? That's actually a really difficult question to get honest with yourself about, because then you have to start thinking about change and the possibility of, you know, doing something different. So you're being, you know, really committing to the problem and being willing to look at it with curiosity. But I guess, you know, another tool would be about changing our relationship with how we speak to ourselves. So how you relate to yourself in your own head. I think for most of us, we've learned along the way to be our own worst critic.
Yeah.
And a lot of people believe that that's their driver, and that without that they would lose their drive and their motivation. It's just not true. And you can experience drive and motivation from a place that's much more enjoyable if it comes from a place of self-acceptance. And so you can be your own coach in your own head, which is a lot more successful and a lot more helpful than being your own sort of high school bully in your own head.
And I love that, because I mentioned the video you did on gaslighting. We hear a lot about gaslighting, right? And we always think of it as the partner or a boss or someone else gaslighting us, which is, you know, horrendous. But you did a video about how we can gaslight ourselves.
Yeah, so it's all about the kind of, and whatever the specifics are in terms of how someone has treated us, if that goes on for long enough, we can internalize that. And how we were treated becomes how we speak to ourselves in our own heads, right? And you do the bully's job for them. And, you know, so anyone who, I don't know, grew up with highly critical parents, for example, are likely to be highly self-critical. And that self-criticism will hold that person back undoubtedly at times. And so I guess that video is really about just highlighting that you can continue to do the damage even when you left that situation if you don't start to look at your relationship with yourself and treat yourself well. And it's really easy to sit here and say, and it's really hard to do in practice. You know, you can't just say, right, I'm going to be nice to myself now, and then it happens, right? It's really tough you're turning around probably a lifetime of habits. So it takes time,
But I think that's what you're saying in the book, is to get in the habit of using these life skills, even on days where you feel okay and you feel positive, to be able to know that you have them in your toolbox, and that, you know, that critical voice will come back up, and then you have the tool to be able to be self-aware, to turn it off, to change the narrative, how we speak to ourselves. And so finally, the title of this book is Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? And you said that patients when you're in doing therapy have said that to you. What would you say when you kind of step back yourself? What would you say, like, wow, nobody told me this before, yourself?
Gosh, there's so much of it. Because yeah, I mean, it's filled with those things as well. It's filled with the stuff that other people found helpful, but also the stuff that I find helpful on a day-to-day. And probably one that I talk about in the book in terms of my experience was a reframing experience that happened in sort of real time, but without me really recognizing it at the time. And I was going into a Viva exam. So it's like an interview exam at the end of clinical training. So you go in and there's a bunch of experts sat in front of you and you have to defend your research and answer questions and stuff like that. And it's the sort of the final thing you have to do. And it's really frightening. And the person who came out of the room before me, before I went in, was in floods of tears and just thought, oh my God, what am I doing? And, you know, it got really kind of hairy. And then a tutor kind of went past me and said, enjoy it. Enjoy it. This is this is one of the only times that people are going to really look into your research and show genuine interest in it and ask you all about it. So enjoy the chance to do that. And I was still stressed. I was still frightened. I still had all that, alert level going on. But what he did, without me realizing at the time, was just reframed it. So I was able to kind of be excited about seeing this as an opportunity as well as, a risk of failure. So it enabled me to perform much better than if I'd just been a rabbit in headlights, worried about failing. So, and it did. It enabled, I did, and then sounds weird to say, but I did enjoy the process, even though it was essentially an exam and the scariest exam ever. But I was able to enjoy it alongside the stress. So, I mean, I talk about reframing in the book, but it's, probably, and I use it every day. I use it all the time.
What I love about this is that it puts really you in the driver's seat of your own life. You talk about self-awareness. You talk about the critical voice. You talk about our ability to reframe how we look at our lives, how we tell ourselves a story. And that is a very empowering belief system, that you have the tools you need to navigate your own life. And ultimately, that's what it is. And you talk about at the very end, on a meaningful life, working out what matters, when to seek help, but also how do you describe, Dr. Julie, a meaningful life? I've written about a meaningful life, and I think that to me is more attainable than a quote ongoing happy life, but a meaningful life. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so the things that I've sort of added into the book enable people to kind of have an introduction to the idea of it. So it allows you to think about what matters most to you. So there are these kind of little values check-ins that you can do on a fairly regular basis, right? Because values do adapt and change depending on the sort of part of your life that, if your values at 21 will be different to your values at 41 and 61 and that kind of thing. So it now enables you to kind of check in with the different areas of your life. And it's really simple. So you can get a piece of paper and split it into different areas, or there's a few kind of exercises you can do in the back that kind of do it for you. And you just ask yourself, okay, in this particular area of my life, let's say parenting, what kind of person do I want to be? How do I want to show up here? So it's not about what you want to happen to you, it's how you want to face the things that happen to you. So, what do you want to bring to that area of your life? What do you want to represent? And therefore, how are you going to face the things that happen in your life? And so, and you can come up with a few kind of words. It might be, enthusiasm or loving or patient. There might be kind of ideas that you have. And then you can kind of ask yourself to rate how important they are to you on a simple kind of scale, but then also asking yourself, well, how closely am I living in line with these right now?
Yeah.
And you can do that with all the different areas. And all that does is allow you to look at, okay, if an area is really important to me and I rate it really highly, but I'm not living in line with it at all, so that's right down, that just indicates that that's an area of my life that I should pay a bit of attention to right now. Because if you start, life can take you away from things that you value, right? Life steers us in all different directions. And all we have to do is recognize it by doing our little check-ins so that we can just steer back towards it and come a little bit closer to that. So it's not something you have to do perfectly. it's just a guide. It's a path that you always want to stay close to.
I love that. And then set forth a vision for yourself of living a meaningful life. And what does that mean to you? And I always say to my kids, it's a full-time job living your own life. So don't worry about what everybody else is doing or judging them or comparing yourself. So many people on social media compare what they're doing to somebody else and then feel like, oh, I'm not doing this. But if your path is to live a meaningful life, and as your path is to be a certain kind of person, that's like a full-time job.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. So Dr. Julie Smith, the book, it's a big bestseller. Why has nobody told me this before? Everyday tools for life's ups and downs. You can follow her on social media. Her videos are really terrific. And the book is really terrific. And it's a really easy read. And as I said before, it really gives you the power to change your thinking. It gives you the power to absorb the tools, what to do with anxious thoughts. We all have them. And so many of us go like, well, how do I handle that? She has suggestions and tools, which I love the word tools, in here to help you navigate these really unprecedented times. So I want to thank you so much. Congratulations to you. And I hope we will talk again, because I know you've written on burnout, you've written on, we could talk forever on just one chapter, but I think it's great that your mission is really to help people who might not have access to therapy, who can't afford therapy, and who don't know that these tools are out there.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Julie.